you're giving me a look.
Your lives.
Turns out that's just the way you look.
Your life, sir.
All right, so like we talked about this morning at the briefing, we're going to talk today about professionalism and what professionalism means, right? Because I think it means a lot more than sometimes we think it means. And professionalism should extend into everything that we do in the profession of arms, all right? So we'll talk a little bit about that. But before we start, I want to open it up. You know, we open it up on Facebook to questions, and the first time that worked out really well, lots of questions. The second time we did that, 0 questions. So, just in person here, what questions do you have about anything? Rumors in the unit, any sort of future in the unit, you name it. What do you got questions about? Anything. This is good.
Is there still going to be a push for a second shirt?
There is still a push for a second shirt. Yep. So we are trying to get that through A1 at NGB. Right now, there's a moratorium on what's called MCRs, manpower change requests. So even if we wanted to right now, we couldn't take one of our resources and turn it into a first sergeant. But we have that intent down the road for the ADS to have a first sergeant, all to ourselves, and then the ADG and the SS to share a first sergeant. And so that'll take the manpower and not quite split it half and half, but split the duties. So a much needed resource that we've got to have, because the first sergeant is hopping all the time, both good and bad things, right? So yes, we're going to get that eventually. We just don't know when. Colonel Lewis, thank you for joining us, sir.
Sure.
What else? So questions like that, things that you just are kind of on the tip of your, or the back of your mind actually. If it was on the tip of your tongue, you'd be asking me.
Has there been any updates to the flight plan?
Yeah, that one fell off the back of the stove for me. So I'll be the first to admit that. I intended to get it out every quarter, right? So April was the publish, April, May, June. So I wanted to get it out in July, and here we are, September, and I haven't gotten it out. So it turns out what I meant was every 6 months we're going to get it out. So yeah, I want to get it out this fall. A few minor changes, little tweaks here and there, but for the most part, the flight plan remains intact. We're knocking out a whole bunch of stuff, and the things that are long-term stuff like professional development, we've got teams built with Capristo and Brockman, and we just put another person on that team. Calder is on that team as well. So we're getting at the things on the flight plan. So most of the updates that we will do will be marking things off that we've completed and coming up with new things that we want to do, which is where input from the unit is important, right? Because if you think there's something that we need to get at in the next year or 2 or 5 or 10, we need to know about that. So since Jesse asked the question, I'll give you a quick update on him. We're still trying to get him out the door to ACC A5 YG, which he would be, if any of you remember Captain Hickman, now Major Hickman, Captain when he was with us. He's been at ACC doing incredible work for us. He's since moved on to a fellowship in DC, and Jesse Whitmer was supposed to rip him out, and unfortunately we're running into some problems with the orders. Any day now, we'll get that sorted, and Jesse will get out the door. All right. What else?
So the DO yesterday briefed that we're doing less with less, and just from my humble viewpoint, we're doing more with less. Just trying to get your idea of where we can expect your support for pushback on some of these higher taskings that we get, supporting the multitude of Malgomeros, not getting CCO support, et cetera, and all the sections and crews doing with more with less, not really this less by less concept that we're trying to go to.
So the first thing that has to happen for us to do less with less, because the taskings aren't going to stop, right? Everybody has this insatiable appetite for support and a lot of training support. But the first thing we're going to have to do is be willing to say no, right? And in our flight plan, it says in there that at the ADS level, I will take up the cause of saying no to make sure that our workload is balanced, right? So I will be going to Colonel Lewis and asking him to turn some things off with First Air Force. What those things are though, I'm gonna need you guys to tell me what you can't do, right? And that's what soon to be Colonel Brown and Colonel Camel have been coming around to the offices asking, what is it that you do and what is it that you aren't doing? Because that's the most important thing, right? And if we're not doing it, and that's okay that we're not doing it, well let's just turn that off altogether, right? And if we're doing things that nobody requires us to do them, and it's not critical to our mission conduct, let's kill those things. So we've got to get input from you guys, and I think we've got a good amount of data so far. And if there's one person that isn't afraid to say no to something, it is Rick Camel. So Rick's going to come to me and say, we can't do this anymore. And I will go to Colonel Lewis and say, we can't do this anymore. And hopefully he will support us in that. And we'll get to that doing less with less. I can't tell you exactly what right now, Skip, but that is the philosophy that both Hump and I share, is we want to get to that.
Thank you.
All right.
Sir, so Weapons System Council kind of based, can you kind of clarify where we actually are? Like, are the BCCs going to be ever, actually dubbed a weapon system or not? Because I've heard that we're not going to, but it's okay because we're going to be treated like one. But going back 4 or 5 years ago when we did the manpower studies and all that, they're like, we need to be a weapon system because that helps drive requirements and everything. So where is this and what is this if we're not going to be treated like one?
Yeah, so where we've left it is, as Pete Hickman walked out the door at ACC A5, and he was the champion along with CJ at ACC A3, we left it at, no, you are not officially designated as a weapon system, but you will be treated in all respects as a weapon system. And the reason we're not designated as a weapon system is because we fall under 4 different PECs, right? And to try to get all of these 4 different PECs crammed into one, it reduces our flexibility to get money from different places, right? Because each PEC can get a different funding source, right? So if we go into one PEC, take everything that is the BCC, turn it into this weapon system, and have one program element code, all of a sudden our flexibility is really limited, especially when it comes to money. But there's no need. Pete Hickman's philosophy and his bosses was, there's no need for us to be designated as a weapon system. It only comes with those restrictions that I just talked about. There's really no benefit outside of what we're already getting. Other people have a different opinion. So when Jesse gets out to ACC, he may look at that again and see if that's something that we want to continue to fight, but as of right now, no, we're not pursuing being designated as a weapon system. And Colonel Lewis and Jesse, correct me or add in.
I mean, so technically, we do have a weapon system, the ANTPY, whatever number, encompasses primarily BCSF. But, so yes, we technically do have a weapon system that we are using. But
So the BCSF is a weapon system. The BCC as a whole is not a weapon system.
So does it not help dictate manning numbers and stuff like we preached in the years past? Or is it, those are the things we're just going to
No.
be treated like? Okay.
Being designated a weapon system doesn't help us with manning. And I think it was us, and I started that, like, I think back in 2006. It was us on the outside looking in, going, well, all of these other assets are designated as a weapon system, and we're not, and they get care and feeding and support, and we're not, so clearly that is the answer to get what they're getting. And maybe it was based on a false premise, and that's why they were getting the care and feeding. The real answer is probably they had a consolidated voice, like the F-16 has a weapon system council, and they all meet all the time, and they have a clear voice, and they push that voice all the way up to the COMAC and the chief of the Guard Bureau, and they say, we need this for our community, and they get it, right? And that was probably why we weren't getting what we wanted to get. So now with our weapon system council and our singular voice, We're getting a lot of traction on a lot of things. We've got general officer backing on a whole lot of things with General Ekman. So we're seeing a lot of results now, even though we're not, as a BCC, designated as a weapon system. The BCSF being designated as a weapon system, while technically true, it buys us nothing. Yeah. Okay. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the lean in, because what I don't want is grumbling behind the scenes in the unit about this that divides us. All right, so does anybody have any concerns about a women's only group meeting once a month at the Watts?
I don't, sir.
Non-retribution, non-retribution whatsoever. I want to have an open conversation about it. And I want the people in this room to have the courage when somebody's sitting around complaining that, you know, they think that's wrong, and they're allowed to think that it's wrong, right? But what we can't have is just toxic opinions and cabals of dissent about gender-based things, like, oh, why do women get their own group and men don't get their own group, and things like that.
Sir, well, first, is cabal's a word?
Yeah, a cabal.
But-
It's like a little group.
Okay.
Up to no good.
I learned that one.
Yeah, it's up to no good.
No, I think what people might want to know is just like other groups or meetings or councils, you know, what the not the objective per se. Well, you want to know the objective, but you know, I think people want visibility into it at some point, which is probably the goal, so that then they can help support it, right? So it's like, is this an inclusive thing? Which I don't think it is, but I think people may be thinking, well, this is an inclusive thing that is only for women. No one else can know what's going on inside that thing because it's women only, which I don't think is the objective of it. I think the objective is to talk about the issues and then maybe bring those issues to light so that the squadron can support them, men and women alike.
It is 100% the second one. There's going to be complete transparency. The question came up, you know, are men invited? The answer is, men are not invited, but they are not excluded for the first couple meetings. And here's the reason behind that, okay? And there's a distinction between not being invited and excluded. Okay, so you can go if you want, but it was really designed for the women of the organization to get together and talk about issues that are affecting women in the workplace. Because whether you believe that it's happening or not, there are distinct issues that women face in a work environment. Okay, so they want an opportunity to get together and talk about those issues, right? So if a man wants to go and be supportive, because what we can't have is a man going in there and being disruptive. We don't tolerate that in any meeting, whether it's gender-based or not, right? Somebody goes in and is counter-productive to the desires of that meeting. But if you really want to be supportive, let them meet for the first couple times and figure out exactly what they want it to be, right? And then once they figure out exactly what they want it to be, their intent is to have men invited to this organization, because it's understood if it's just women in this organization complaining about being underrepresented and dealing with a lack of privilege in the organization, it's going to fall on deaf ears because the men don't hear it in the organization, right? So eventually it will be a completely invited, inclusive, all-gender group that talks about women's issues in the workplace. But I'm not telling anybody they can't go to the first two meetings. I'm just asking you, give them a little room. All right? Any questions about any of that? Is that offensive to anybody? It can be.
So there's no mission statement. There's no. The only thing is that they want to meet separately from men to find out why they're meeting.
I don't want to say there's no mission statement because I can't answer that question.
Okay.
I think if you asked the organizers of it, Christina Roberts and Senior Master Sergeant Osborne, they would have a very clear mission statement, which is provide an opportunity for women to share experiences in the workplace and identify issues. I think that mission will evolve. Yes, boss?
So I'll tell you, I was at one of the wing commander conference. We had a female wing commander ask all the wing commanders to stand behind, specifically in the ACC realm. And she, as the wing commander, got together with a bunch of just the females as well. Got a whole group together because she heard a bunch of grumblings and questions and issues. So she wanted to get them together and say, hey, I want to hear what's going on, because there's still things that we do, whether it's intentional or not intentional, as men, that are not necessarily the best for women. We say things not meaning harm or anything like that, but we say them nonchalantly, not thinking about it, and it does impact them. And it's impacted them for their entire lives. And then to come in the military and they continue to have that occur to them in the workplace, where we don't tolerate that, as zero tolerance in the military, any type of discrimination, whether it's against women, whether it's against ethnicity, or whatever you have, or gender. And I didn't really think about it, because it's not on my mind, it's not something I deal with, but other people do have to deal with it, and women have to deal with it, and it gives them an opportunity to talk about it, and then hopefully, raise some issues, like just a simple issue that they've been fighting for a long time is getting a flight suit that actually fits for them and works for them. We still are finally just now testing out a flight suit that actually fits women. I mean, how long we've been having women flying with us, but we still can't get a uniform that fits them properly. And I think even the OCPs aren't really all that great. I think they're just dude sizes that they just give to women. It's opportunities for them to talk to each other and raise issues as a whole. And it's not just within our organization, but it's across really the Department of Defense, things that we just do that we don't even feel like we do. And it was very eye-opening, disheartening. So when I came back, I sat down with a bunch of key personnel and asked them if they felt that way, or if some of our personnel felt that way. And so that may have kind of spawned it, but it's an opportunity for them to talk. And then if need be, if things come out, they can come talk to leadership, and we can try to help shape and mold. Because it is zero tolerance and discrimination in any form or manner. And sometimes we do it not intentionally, to be honest with you.
So, and the one thing that I really think about is, if a woman is being sexually harassed in this organization on a regular basis, and they go to a women's group, and there are men in the room who insist on being in the room to prove a point or whatever, or be supportive, and I'm telling you the best way to be supportive is to give them a little space. But would they feel comfortable bringing that up? And I can guarantee you they probably would. Right, so we want to get that out there. Go ahead.
So I'm a woman.
Yeah, maybe we should ask you women.
So I can bring up a little bit what we've talked about so far, and just starting the group. I will stand up. I don't like public speaking, but I can talk a little bit about it. And right now what we're talking about is mentorship. It's the big thing that we're talking about in the group, and we're just coming together to support each other in positive affirmation, so the women start to feel like we can rely and support each other and help each other grow professionally. So right now, that's the biggest topics that we're dealing with. We have our first meeting on the 11th, so I'm pretty sure more stuff will come up, but right now, just what we've been talking about is mentorship and helping each other grow professionally, especially helping, having the senior NCOs and some of the officers help the junior enlisted come up in their career and teach them. So.
No, thank you. See, and that's another example of, it's just funny. All of us men are sitting around talking about the women in the organization and what we need. And thank you, Christine, for standing up and being like, well, hey, why don't I have a voice? So it's just, diversity is our main goal, right? And people go, well, how can you have diversity if you have this exclusive group? That's not diversity. And I would offer a counter argument that in order to achieve the greater good of diversity, sometimes you have to have a little bit of exclusivity so people can work out some of these issues, right? And ultimately lend to the greater diversity of the organization, right? So that's kind of where we're at on that issue. You can tell Colonel Lewis and I support this. Colonel Humphrey's been out of country for a little while, so we'll get his opinion when he gets back, but I'm certain that he'll be in support of it as well. All right, so September 11th is the first meeting. I encourage all of us to be very supportive of this concept, all right? And if you're not supportive of it, you can come talk to me about it. And again, no retribution or anything like that. I want to hear your opinion just as much, okay? What else?
So going back to the earlier comment about doing more with less with less. Shaking his head. Thanks, Boozy. Thanks for your support. This came from your people. 154th week, anyways. They had a poster. I took a picture of it because it was eye-opening. And it said our 3 priorities: wartime mission readiness, taking care of airmen, and doing less. And they defined with bullet points what wartime mission readiness is: technical competencies, medical readiness, physical readiness, etc. Taking care of airmen, get to know your people, their kids, their spouses, etc. And then it just said, take a hard look at what we do and ask yourself, does it contribute to priorities 1 and 2 above? If the answer is no, then why are we doing it?
Yeah.
So taking that kind of approach may be more beneficial in the future. Some things we have to do, yes, sir.
You don't have to raise your hand, sir.
Well, I'll tell you too, so if anyone's ever been to, what do we call that thing, the IG meeting we have?
Oh, the-
We call it something different. But we have our monthly meeting at IG, and, you know, one of the main things we always talk about is, I know we're not doing everything that every AFI mandates us to do, right? There's no way we're doing it with the amount of people we have in our organization. So we have to identify the things we're not doing, and there's nothing wrong with that. We identify it, we ask for a waiver, or if it's something like Colonel Berger said, if it's something that it doesn't even, nothing tasks us to do it, or nothing mandates us to do it, and we're doing it, then we probably don't need to be doing it or wasting our time and effort. But we need to get after the things that are important to us, and we as leadership know that we're not doing everything as AFIs. There is no way. But yet we say we are. And so we just ask, identify it, we'll either waive it, or if we, at our level, if we have to go up, we'll say, hey, we can't get after this, or we push other things off to the side if it's an important item. Like, I mean, if we're doing all these exercises for everybody else, which we do all the time, how much training value do we get out of those? Maybe some, maybe none. Those are discussion points that we have to then take forward and say, hey, I can't get after this because it's eating up my time. I can't do what I need to do to train my guys because I'm training your guys. And I'm not your training unit. I need to help my guys become warriors and actually get out there and do the mission. It's just small things like that. We have to identify it, and if we don't identify it, then we can't help them.
And I 100% agree with 154's poster. And you got to think that when you try to cram 5 pounds of stuff or 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound sock, you're not doing any of that very good, right? So you take all of these things that you're trying to achieve for the mission, and everything's just done mediocre. Whereas if you trim off a whole bunch of stuff, all of a sudden the stuff that doesn't matter or contribute, you get better at the stuff that we're supposed to be doing, right? And that's what I want to get to. I want to be doing CT. If I could wave a magic wand and have a robust CT program today, I absolutely would, because I feel that's one of the most important things we're doing right now. For me, my mission is, in my tenure as commander, create a CT program that properly supports the mission and counters the emerging threat. The second thing is take care of all of you guys to the best of my ability, right? But that's what we need to get at. Everything else is secondary, and the mission, of course, is always number 1. Okay. Promotions. Any concerns about promotions or results of boards lately, or you got anything, Bobby?
Sergeant Kolb says in your last call you mentioned that on the officer side of the house you would be deciding promotions instead of doing a board. Is there any talk on doing that with the enlisted members and the new chief, or is this going to be done only on the officer side of the house?
No, there's no talk of that, Brian Culp. And because I will work with the chief and offer guidance and counsel, but the chief manages the enlisted corps, and the previous chief wanted boards for every promotion opportunity and hiring opportunity. I don't know what the new chief is Ryan Burke, coming from Eads. I don't know what his opinion is on that yet, And we'll sit down and talk about it, and we'll let you know. But right now, status quo is boards for the enlisted. And I don't disagree with boards for the enlisted. I think the officer side of the house and the enlisted side of the house do have distinct differences, and the promotion process is one of those differences. So more to follow, but as of right now, no, status quo, and we'll see what the new chief wants to do.
Just so you know, Chief Select Burke is watching.
Oh, sweet. All right, well, you think about that, Chief. And yeah, so let's talk about Sergeant Burke real quick. He's listening. Go get a glass of milk or something. When we had the EADS guys out here, I pulled aside all of the EADS guys and I asked them what they thought about Sergeant Burke. And from airman with 2 stripes on their shoulder up to a major and a lieutenant colonel, it was, you want this guy as your chief. He is rock solid. So a few commanders calls ago, I told you, I promised you I would find you a good chief, an outstanding chief that was going to take care of you guys. And I think we found that individual. He comes to us with a whole lot of experience at the sector, a little bit of experience up in Alaska earlier, and he used to be right here at the Western Air Defense Sector. And when he shows up, a bunch of you older people are probably going to go, oh yeah, I remember you. So it's a good thing for us, and I'm looking forward to him getting here 1 January or a few days after, depending on how his travel works out. But any questions about that?
Sir, he did say he's on it. He's thinking about it.
Okay, nice. We did just recently promote a bunch of officers without a board. And the reason we do that is because I would not be a good commander if I wasn't paying attention to what my officers were doing day in and day out. And so when it comes time that I get an opportunity to promote somebody, I already know, and we stratify our officers in their OPRs and things like that, right? So I already know if they need to be promoted or not. And I just take that resource and I go, you're promoted. We've already seen what you do, right? So that's the calculus that goes into the officer promotion system that we run on the ADS side. And it may apply to the enlisted in the future, I don't know. But we just promoted those six captains to major. And we are gonna have a hiring board for air battle managers, and we'll be able to hire 3 more captains and below in the near future. So that'll happen in a month or so. So it's this constant churn of trying to get people into the seat to ease the manning issues that we have that will probably, I keep saying it's gonna get better, right? But what I'm realizing after being in as the DO for a few years and now in this seat for a few years, this constant churn of manpower is always going to be present. So there will always be a little bit of a manning strain, right? But as long as we stay on top of it and keep recruiting and keep hiring, we keep it manageable. All right. As soon as we let down our guard and don't do that, that becomes an issue, right? So that's what we're trying to do, is ease the manning strain. We're also trying to figure out. Hump is trying to right size the staff offices, and also maybe create some positions in staff offices that give people places to go without straining the flights. So he's trying to figure out exactly where the flight manning is right now, where we can do less with less, and grow our people all at the same time. So him and I had a 3-hour meeting yesterday trying to figure all of this out. He's the right guy to figure this out. I can guarantee you. I offer him some advice, some history, but he is the right person to figure out how we're going to do this right. Okay, group level XP, that's still a thing that we're trying to get approved by Colonel Lewis and Colonel Humphrey. He's in the room right now. But what we're doing is creating a squadron XP, and once we create that squadron XP, we are going to start doing all the things that a group XP does, but at the squadron level, and then make it completely exportable up to the group, and just give the group and the wing equivalent this ready-made product, where we are dealing with requirements at the group level, we're dealing with plans and programs at the group level, running exercises at the group level that brings in our SS counterparts a little bit more, So that's where we're trying to get at. I think we're gonna have a pretty good solution here in the near future. We got Skip an office downstairs now, that finally got approved. So you will have your own enclosed office on the first floor, in room 104. We'll have requirements in there. We'll have exercises is still out in BFE is what we're calling it. But eventually we'll try to get exercises into that same room. And then we've also got on the SS side, SCX, which is their equivalent of requirements. They're gonna stay separate for now and not gonna join us for the group party if we go that direction until their manning can sustain something like that.
I plan to invite him to all my meetings though.
There you go. Cool. And that also puts Skip at the right level. You know, he's a commander in the organization, and so instead of working for me, it will put him more in line where Colonel Lewis has a vice commander at the group level, and then Colonel Humphrey has 2 squadron commanders and a group plans office with Colonel Bossum and me and Colonel Fawcett running those organizations. And actually the group plans, it's very confusing, but Colonel Lewis is Colonel Fawcett's boss. I don't understand it either. Okay, moving on.
You and me both.
I'm just kidding. All right, professionalism. Let's talk about that for a minute. So, I think sometimes professionalism is viewed as your uniform looking good and being able to snap a smart salute and customs and courtesies and things like that. I don't think it is just that. What do you guys think professionalism means in the 225th ADS? How do we become more professional? Maybe shorten up our intel briefings. Less jokes.
The team has spoken, sir.
You know, relationships with one another.
Okay. How so?
Well, you talked about customs and courtesies, but I think more than that, just how we interact. Maybe this is more getting into like the emotional side of relationships, but I think like that's a big part of the professionalism. So less email, more face to face. I think that creates it establishes better relationships, which I think ultimately makes a more professional organization. I think people might think like the opposite of that, like more relationships means more of friendships or lack of that professionalism, but I think it would actually increase professionalism.
I think it
There's
also
more
has to do with
respect for one another.
knowing your audience,
Mhm.
when you're talking to that person you may have a good relationship with, and other people don't know that, you might be more, I guess, professional in the appearance of communicating with them. But I mean, developing the relationship is certainly part of it as well.
Okay.
I think a key element that I don't think we pay enough attention to is that discretion and confidentiality responsibility of officers or as professionals. Medical profession has, its Hippocratic oath and very stringent confidentiality requirements and how we have to be discreet. And I think it's really incumbent on us as professionals to really take that to heart about what you have to be discreet about. And I'm not talking OPSEC, mostly talking about personnel issues. And that confidentiality, not only when someone comes to talk to you in a confidential manner, but also if you have information on people or especially their families, to make sure that confidentiality. A lot of people like to talk and chat, and we're always on Facebook and the various other means of communication today, but discretion and confidentiality has to be a professional, you have to, that's I think a key element of that we don't really spend a lot of time thinking about or talking about.
No, that's great. John Maxwell, 21, what's his book, 21 Irrefutable? Yep, that's the one. He talks about, in the vein of that, like talking behind people's backs and gossip, right? And as you're talking to somebody about somebody else, when you end that conversation, that person walks away and is most likely left with the thought of, I wonder if that person is talking about me like that when I'm not in the room, right? And it just goes to a lack of professionalism. So when we don't have that discretion, we find that gossip is fun and make that part of our day. That really erodes the professionalism of our organization. So yeah, absolutely, Skip. Thank you.
And I think I think it was yesterday where you talked, hey, Bloggins is not allowed on the ops floor anymore because of, hey, he has a situation. That's being discreet. You're not hiding anything, but you're giving the minimum amount of information that we can execute what we need to execute without in any way denigrating the individual or providing details that, hey, the masses do not need to know and could potentially embarrass an individual.
Absolutely. And we're not a one mistake Air Force or a one mistake organization. So what I don't want to happen is something happens to a person and then all of a sudden we're all talking about it. And that is a black mark on somebody's career for the rest of their time in the organization. We have long memories in the Air National Guard. Colonel Humphrey talked about that in his all calls, right? So, because we're with each other for 10 or 15 years, and when somebody starts complaining about somebody because of something that happened 10 years ago, or there's a hiring board or something, and well, he said this about this airman and that was bad, and it's like, well, that was 8 years ago. This person's grown. They took feedback, they grew, they're much better now. So I think giving people room to grow is probably also part of our professional nature in the Guard especially, because we're with each other for a long time.
We haven't talked about our, sorry. I don't know.
No, just stay quiet. Christine.
I was gonna say that there's a saying that goes, people don't wanna know how much you know until you show how much you care. And empathy and compassion go a long way in the workforce, especially with people. When people know that you're empathetic to who they are as a person, they'll give more in the workplace. And that kinda can go along with what you all are saying about professionalism, relationships, and growing.
Yeah, thanks. I care. What do you have to say?
Good say. We haven't talked about our skills, right? We are professionals in what we do, and what we're trained to do. All the time and effort and money that taxpayers have put into us, all the personal sacrifices that you and your family and friends have made to get you to place, to the AFSC, to the whatever level you are on your uniform, you are a professional at your job. These key elements, these pillars that we're describing help make us the great leaders and followers within that, but we are a professional in our air defense role here. So let's not forget what our mission is, to go out and provide air sovereignty for NORAD. So I just want you guys to keep that in the front of your load when you're talking about why and what you are professional and how to get better at it.
Thanks, Mac. Apolitical, that was something that, you know, as I've done some reading over the time about what it truly means to be a professional. And when you are in uniform, part of that professional arms is being an apolitical individual. So what does that mean? It means whether you're on the left or the right, when you put this uniform on and come into the workplace, you are a airman before anything else. And so especially when you're in a position of authority, as a NCO or an officer, if you are publicly making political statements and taking a stance on political issues in the workplace, that there's a very large danger of alienating a certain segment of the population. So now you are leading, but you have alienated part of the people who work for you and work with you because of a stance that you've taken on something, right? So when we put this uniform on, we have to become apolitical. When you take it off, hey, free game, right? But in the workplace, we maintain our professionalism by being apolitical. Okay? Any questions about that? So at 3 in the morning when you're working a night shift, try to refrain from talking politics on the floor. All right? Don't try to refrain, don't do it, okay? Respect. I think that the concept of respect drives our professionalism. Respect for one another, respect for what we're doing here to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States and the state of Washington. Respect for our mission and the importance of our mission. Respect for our leaders. Respect for the process and the system. A lot of times, sport complaining is very, it's easy to do, right? Oh, well, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. What is the Air Force thinking, you know? Well, as leaders and as professionals, we need to think that there is a process and there's a system in place, and leaders have been put in place, and they are making decisions that have our best interest at heart. Okay, so sport complaining probably erodes our professionalism a little bit, so don't do it. All right. Now, identifying a problem in the system and working to fix it, that's different. That is completely different. The working to fix it is the most important part of that. That's when it goes from being unprofessional and just complaining about something to the highest levels of professionalism by identifying a problem and trying to work within the system to fix it. All right? Anybody have any thoughts about respect across the board? What other elements of respect have I missed?
So, in APM anyways, respect somebody enough to help them get better. Example we just had award season, and we had some people submit some stuff that was just like, who wrote this? But instead of going down and questioning them, we pulled them up and said, hey, you had a lot of good data here, you just need to learn how to do it, and sat there and tell people, like, this is how you fix this bullet to get it the way it needs to be. So respecting somebody enough to sit down with them and say, well, yes, you didn't do it right, you tried, let's get you to the standard and let's keep building people up. We've had, luckily, in a pretty big flight, we've got a ton of opportunity to get down and get at that. Our NCOs are taking that upon themselves to get that, and all of our master sergeants, tech sergeants have seen, or to staffs, and I think that's like the big piece of professionalism, is realizing that if somebody's giving it the honest try, whether they hit the mark or miss it, I mean, they gave it the try, let's respect them enough to help them correct that shot.
Absolutely. Everybody in this unit is a good American trying to do the best that they can possibly do, right? If we have any doubt about that, then what are they doing in this unit? Why are we keeping them around, right? So as long as you are in this unit, the assumption is you are a good American who is doing the best that they can do to support this mission and support each other, right? So when somebody makes a mistake, instead of crushing them, I'm sorry, the Canadians as well. When I say American, I mean North American. You know, we shouldn't be crushing our people. We shouldn't belittle them. We shouldn't make them feel stupid. We build them up, right? We say, hey, we can probably do better in this area, and here's how we're going to do better. So thanks for doing that in APM. That's what we need to be doing.
I think the two of them tie together really well. Leadership, respect. You know, I think that when you break it down, it's a lot easier. And going to leadership courses and stuff, you kind of hear the same thing regurgitated over and over and over. It's good to hear it from different perspectives and different angles. But when it comes down to it, I always like to think of it how I screw up, you know, as a leader. Yeah, I am a leader at my job outside of here. But I screw up all the time, and I'm like, man, if somebody called me on it for every single one and just made me feel like demeaned in, you know, hey, you have no shot here, as opposed to coming alongside of you when you need to, and kicking you in the butt sometimes when you need to, or whatever it happens to be, but doing it in, like you said, kind of combining all this stuff in a compassionate way, or in a way to say, hey, I want you to be better because it's going to help me, it's going to help the organization, it's going to help all of this in the long run, and I want it to happen to me. And I mentioned something at last month's all-call briefing that we did, is that I think a lot of times we look for the next level, especially you know, as you're coming up as a junior enlisted or a junior officer, you're always looking at, hey, what can the organization or a certain group of individuals do for me, or you know, what can I get out of this, as opposed to saying, hey, what can I throw in here to you know, what are some leadership traits that I have? What are some skills that I have that might help somebody? And I know one of those things is a mentorship program. And I know a lot of people like to view that as, hey, it's going to be your direct supervisor, but just finding people in those certain scenarios of like what you were saying, sir, an area that you didn't see too well, you know, somebody submits a package that looks, you know, interesting to you, and you go, hey, I can probably help you out with that. I'm submitted quite a few of these, and you know, it doesn't necessarily happen to be a supervisor, it doesn't happen to be, or it doesn't have to be, hey, you have to go to a week-long professional development course to figure out what the heck you're doing wrong. You can say, I don't want to look at this, you know, to yourself and say, I don't want to see this over and over, so how can I help this person get better at this? Hey, I know this guy over here is really, really good at writing, maybe I can connect the two of those people together. And that's a mentorship opportunity that I think a lot of people miss because we're thinking more big picture of either, hey, I don't want to deal with this, and I'm just going to demean them behind their backs and say, go to a professional development course and hopefully it works out. As opposed to saying, hey, we can fix small problems and hopefully not let them create or turn into big problems if we just take that time and say, hey, I want to see you get better. I want to be better. I would want somebody else to do this to me. Why can't I do it for you too? And I think if we all kind of like have that mentality or that view, I think that all those things, respect, professionalism, all that starts to be better.
No, mentoring we talked about last month, and we've taken a stance of the active seeking of a mentor, because I think what we hopefully all agreed on, I said it, I hope you agree with it, was that for a mentee to go to a mentor and say, will you be my mentor, is an easier conversation than a mentor going to the mentee and being like, I'm going to mentor you now. So hopefully people have approached you guys and said, hey, would you be my mentor? We're trying to get that word out. At the end of feedback for promotions, Don Pierce and I were talking the other day. His team had a great idea, and we kind of matched ideas. It was like, hey, I thought of that too. In feedback in the board, when you give somebody an issue that they can improve on, you also give them a potential mentor and say, this person does that really well. What we're giving you feedback you need improvement on. So we're going to touch base with this individual, go talk to them, and we'll let them know you're coming, and try to create that mentorship to make our people better. So this feedback isn't just going out there and it's like, oh great, more feedback. No, we're actually doing something about this feedback, and we're setting people up for success. All right, I only want to take a couple more minutes talking about professionalism, and then I just want to open it up to what do we need to do better. Okay, so I want to spend the last 10 minutes talking about that. All right, but and that's for you guys telling me what we need to do better, not me telling you what we need to do better. I would have already told you that. Okay, so professionalism, it's all of these things we've already talked about, but it is also developing yourself. Okay, taking an active role in developing yourself, because nobody cares more about your development than you do, and that's the way it should be, at least. Okay, so that means reading. You got to be reading, or at least listening to books. Take the easy way out, like Dash does.
True statement.
Yeah. And not just any books, but books about military history, military culture, business, management. You've got to be reading now. I wish somebody had told me when I was younger, Tub, you should be reading every single day of your life. I'm finally starting to do that, and I just see the benefits. It's unbelievable the amount of what I've learned just in the last 2 years. It's still not much, but to me it's so much more than I learned the first 18 years of my career. So make sure you're reading, make sure you're staying physically fit, because that's also a part of professionalism. You can't counsel somebody on their physical fitness if you look like a greasy bag of food. All right? And then emotional development. Okay, we talk a lot about IQ and intelligence quotients, but what about your EQ? What about your ability to relate to people? What about your ability to acknowledge things that are wrong with yourself and that need to be improved upon? So we're developing ourselves intellectually, emotionally, professionally. We're developing our relationships, and this all adds to our professionalism. So you can contribute to this unit and this mission. All right, so that's my charge to you guys is let's spend every day figuring out ways that we can be more professional, okay? Because you can see, it doesn't stop at looking good in your uniform and snapping a smart salute. All right, 10 minutes or less. What do we need to do better? I don't care how creepy it is. What needs to be fixed? What is it?
Kindle red switch.
Yeah. Yeah, it does need to be fixed. We're working on it. Everybody's happy with everything.
So are there like, or is there a plan maybe for us to get, or have like a resiliency day, or like maybe Eats take the whole AO, where
Yep.
we can get to other flights and?
November. So it's got a specific purpose on this one, but it will be the model for future ones. So the one in November, we're gonna have a 72-hour downtime for ups maintenance, and on one of those days, or ups replacement, which is power supply.
Universal power supply.
Universal power supply, thank you. So it's for suicide awareness and prevention, like a wingman day, where it is the tactical pause that Chief Wright talked about and General Goldfein. So we got an extension to December, Guard units did, because we're Guard units, right? We don't meet as often as regular Air Force does. So the date is TBD in November, we'll let everybody know, but it'll be a full day of probably talking about suicide, but also doing some fun stuff, and team building and making sure that we've got each other's backs as wingmen. So yeah, more to follow on that, and then that will be the model for future things like that. Okay, so we can do that better, and we will. What do you got, Mac?
Sir, I think it would be a better unit if we focused a little bit more on empowering our enlisted force with greater responsibilities and tasks. And recently we've heard some success stories of just event planning, that type of thing, but certainly capable of more. It was good to see, as kind of we were in the interim period, some seniors sitting in the chief's position while we were looking for a new chief, and I'm sure the feedback that you get from both Sergeant Swim and Tally, that was a real valuable time for them to sit there and grasp and look into what the next position's like. So continue to find more opportunities, and that's on the enlisted force themselves. That's not on O's to find those opportunities for you, but go out and seize those opportunities when they present themselves.
Yeah, we're working on a plan to put the right rank in the right level of position, to make sure like seniors are doing senior stuff, masters are doing master stuff, because it's got a little wonky over the years in this organization. So we're actively working on that, but it's the little things day in and day out where if you're making a decision that somebody else can make, or you're doing a task that somebody else can do, then you're probably wrong. And I'm mostly talking to the senior management, the lieutenant colonels and the senior NCOs. Push that stuff down, right? If you're running around, people come into my office and they go, "Oh, you're so busy." And I go, I'm not. And the reason is, the reason I'm not busy is because I got a bunch of great people running around doing stuff that I don't have to do. So if you find yourself so busy, you can't even take a moment to breathe, well, you really probably need to look at how are you empowering your people, and how are you delegating, right? So what Mac's talking about is absolutely true. We got to do better at that. We should be building our people from the time they have 2 stripes on their arm, or they're lieutenants, and they should be doing the hard stuff, and they should be given the mission briefings and planning the events. When Staff Sergeant Huey was selected for the Thai visit recently, there were some eyebrows raised, like, well, a staff sergeant can't do that job. And we're like, bullcrap. A staff sergeant absolutely can do that job. More importantly, Brandon Huey can do that job, right? It doesn't matter what rank he has on his shoulder. Brandon can get this done, and he can do it well. Knocked it out of the park. So it didn't matter what rank he had on his shoulders. Let's push stuff down to our people and let them shine, so that they can get the awards and the accolades, not us. Yep.
We have one more question on Facebook Live from Zach Dro. Have you heard anything about there being a requirement for WADS to have any of the new 13 Oscar career field positions?
No, not at all. So 13 Oscars will reside at the Air Operations Center and above. We are a tactical level unit, and we will remain 13 Bravos and 1 Charlie 5s and 14 Novembers, and so no 13 Oscars.
What is a 13 Oscar?
13 Oscar is a new career field that they're taking 11, any one series officer, I think, but they're really eyeing 13 Bravos. And it is a operational level command and control expert, operational to strategic. So they will be working at the Air Operations Center, rightly so. All right, what else can we do better?
Is there any talk of down the road kind of expanding the Spark Cell and getting more involvement there? I hear a lot of times people have good ideas or they're banging their head against the wall, whatever it might be, scheduling software or whatever, and I feel like a lot of times they're kind of like, well, what do I do?
Yes.
You can talk about any avenues they have right now or what we might envision in the future?
Yeah, eventually we'd love to get an enlisted person full-time over to work for Slappy Troush. So Major Troush was selected to be, to lead the Spark Cell and lead our innovation push, which meant that we didn't feel like it was an additional duty, it's a duty. So that is his job. We don't have the enlisted manpower to assign somebody to that full-time, but we want to. So we're gonna expand that. And then just yesterday, Matt Venable, Lieutenant Colonel Venable came to me and said, SS would like to get involved in the innovation cell, and Major Hale is a DSG, has a job outside of the organization at Microsoft, I think, and he's got some great ideas. So we're kind of trying to marry that up, and so have part-timers and DSGs and then people as additional duties all tied into the Spark Cell, because innovation is the I in impact. Our statement. So we're going through each one of them. I skipped innovation initially. We're going to come back to innovation as things get more mature, but we talked mentorship last month, professionalism this month. Next month will be accountability. Eventually we'll get back to innovation, so we can complete the impact statement. All right, so does that answer your question? Yeah, I think that Spark Cell, right now, anything with innovation tied to it, if you use the word innovation, the Air Force just starts pelting you in the face with money. So if you go through all the right processes, that is what we're getting after right now, and probably one of the more important things that we can be doing. So our Spark Cell is the wave of the future. Okay?
I have an online question.
What's
from
up?
Cerncold. Is there an update on getting sick call back on McCord and making it easier for our members to get off to Nick instead of having to wait until 1 p.m. that afternoon?
Funny you should mention that, Brian. I have a meeting in 58 minutes with the 194th Flight Docs and the 62nd Commander, or the 62nd Med Group Commander, Colonel McCoy, and we're going to talk about exactly that. Services provided to AGRs, and sick call, and go/no-go pills, and all issues pertaining to you guys. We're going to figure out a way ahead on that one. I am sensitive to the fact that you get sent over to Madigan, and then you get put in the queue for an appointment 5 days from now, and they immediately make you to Nick, and tell you come back in 5 days and we'll look at you and then take you off into Nick maybe, and the impact of the mission. So we'll try to see if we can get seen back at sick call, and I'll have an answer for you around 3:30 this afternoon. All right?
Do you have a couple of minutes to talk about your trip to Denver and any kind of tidbits you want to share from going to August?
Sure. We went to Naugus, which is typically attended by officers and chief warrant officers on the Army side. Sometimes chiefs go to it, but it is the officer side of, if the enlisted are familiar with EANGUS, Enlisted Association, National Guard of the U.S. Naugus is National Guard Association in the U.S., and it is the professional organization for the National Guard. It would be good to join a professional organization, and if you're going to join one, Naugus would be a good one to join. There's also a few others out there: AFA, MOAA, EANGUS, Air Force Sergeants Association. but Naugus is also a very high-powered one with lots of lobbyists that can get us some really good stuff. If you're interested, come talk to me or come talk to Captain Roberts, who also went on the professional development side. But we went to Denver for the annual conference, and there is a resolution session that I attend and I vote on behalf of the National Guard Association of Washington. And what we got added to one of the resolutions that was presented was JSTARS from Georgia, the Georgia Air National Guard, I should say, presented the idea that the Advanced Battle Management System should be based at Robins in Georgia to replace the JSTARS. And the JSTARS should be sustained until ABMS comes online. And all of us in the greater C2 community can roll our eyes and go, oh, JSTARS, land grab, ABMS, trying to take that mission. But they're doing it right. I mean, really, they're going through their state in August and saying, we're trying to preserve our mission and our role in command and control. ABMS is what's coming on in the future. It's going to be the replacement for the theater air control system eventually, 10 to 15 years from now. But they're saying, they're earmarking and they're saying, we want JSTARS to be a part of this, or at least the Georgia Air National Guard, and take all of their people and move it into ABMS when all is said and done. So we successfully worked with the Georgia Air National Guard to sign on to their resolution and also add the verbiage of and the rest of the Air National Guard Theater Air Control System elements, which includes us, the CRCs, JTACs, ASOGs. So yeah, we're going to work with them for the rest of the year to come up with a more binding resolution that can get accepted into the August legislative agenda that has better verbiage that says all of the TACs in the Guard need to be included in the Advanced Battle Management System, and it needs to have an airborne node and a ground node, and really try to shape the future of the Advanced Battle Management System through the NAUGUS process. Is NAUGUS, I said binding earlier, but is a NAUGUS resolution binding at all? No. What it is it tells our lobbying organization to go to Congress with this message and try to convince congressmen and women to pass legislation that supports this, right? So it's an idea that gets out there and then gets sent to Congress, and hopefully it gets passed eventually. So that's the whole point of NAUGUS, is lobbying Congress. It's a big party as well, if you get a chance to go. If you're not going on a professional development scholarship, it's pay your own way. It can get pricey, but it's also a nice little vacation to Denver. Food everywhere you look, free drinks, both alcoholic and non-alcoholic, lots of activities. So if anybody's interested in going to the conference next year, let me know and we'll go. All right, I'm over time. I wanted to get you guys out of here so we can make Major Fisher, or Captain Fisher's promotion at 1:30. He does a lot for us, so please go support him in his promotion on sea level at 1:30. All right. Any last questions before we call this good? Colonel Lewis, any comments before we wrap it up? All right, everybody on Facebook, thank you for joining us. And soon to be Chief Burke, thanks for joining us, man. Awesome that you dialed in. Looking forward to seeing you in January. All right, Bigfoot!
Strong!